And currently we are in a phase of choosing or basically shortlisting the tools for one of our clients who searches for an EAM tool. And we are going through Abacus and trying to implement some of the scenarios to see how it all works out. And I had some difficulties together with Patrick to deal with some of the situations, so I'd be really, really glad if we can go through them together today and see how it goes.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So I can start sharing my screen if you want, and we can go through each of those one by one, if that makes sense.
Perfect.
I've started the recording as well, by the way, so everything we can go through, we will obviously send that through after today to anyone that needs that.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
So let me just bring up the requirements on here. So these are the ones that were originally sent through?
Yeah, now I can see them. Yeah, thank you.
So we can go through each one of these one by one, unless there's another order you want to go through, or if you want to give maybe a brief idea of what your expectations were or what you've already tried.
Well, basically, I try to play around with the tool, and I think maybe if we'll go through those step by step, then we will get into more depth of this. So maybe, or we can start with the last one.
Yeah, sure.
So the very first important thing to do with our client is that they want to have separated process management and enterprise architecture. And most probably they will use Archimate for enterprise architecture, and the process management they will leave for the process management division, and they will most probably use BPM. So we want to stay in one tool, but we want to be able to link those together. So for example, in Archimate, using a process element for the capturing of a process header or the high-level process with a drill down possibility, like double click, and then we jump into BPMN.
Okay, sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm just opening up the the Archimate sample file we have. So bear with me while I just pull it up on the screen. And you'll notice in Abacus itself, there's a whole bunch of other notations and frameworks that are standalone. So they're just kind of ones that we've adhered to. And then we have what we call hybrid frameworks, which are in essence a combination of exactly what you've just described. So yeah, you're right, Archimate does have a concept of business process, but if you wanted to model that out in much more detail, you might want to use something like BPMN. There are a few ways you can do that. So in the meta model on the left hand side, under the type section, these are all the component types and the connection types within Archimate. If you go to File, Open, and you go to where Abacus is installed, so Program Files 86, Avolution, Abacus. In here, there's what we call a libraries folder. And this libraries folder is essentially a collection of all the other frameworks and notations that we have. You can see these are called .abacuslib. And what we can actually do is open one of these library files within the Archimate file. So open this as a separate window on the left. And then we can actually just drag the bits that we want from BPMN into Archimate. So we can say, well, BPMN has something called a data object. We want to also use that in our Archimate model as well. And so you can effectively just start using the bits that you want from BPMN in Archimate.
And if I want to use it all, like really simple to integrate the technology, do I need to do it like one by one, or?
No, so you can actually drag across these viewpoints as well. So if you dragged across a viewpoint, it will add in all the components that are on that viewpoint. So you can see all of these components get added in. What I would recommend though is trying to understand which of these components you're actually using, because BPMN itself is quite detailed. You have all of these different types of intermediate events and start events. So you might only want to use maybe start event, task activity, gateway, and end event. So maybe 4 or 5 different types. And if you get to a stage where you want to use the entire model, then we can try and get that over to you as well, because you'll actually find our standard libraries come with things like TOGAF using Archimate, or TOGAF using Archimate and BPMN and UML. So we've done this in the past as well. So if you wanted a full model, we can take a look at sending that through.
Okay, but this is fine for me. I mean, if I'll take the viewpoint and then I get all the elements with it, and just to customize it if I want, then it's fine for me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so basically what we have done now, so we have incorporated all of the elements within the types category of the meta model section, right? So now the model itself recognizes BPMN.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Now, so I have also included one viewpoint.
Okay.
The viewpoint section, right? And now we want to do the link. Yeah?
From Archimate to BPMN?
Yeah. Well, let's go with the process because that'll be the case. So I need to double click on a process and drill down into a BPMN specification of it.
Yep, sure. So what you eventually might have, I don't think I've got the Arc Assurance project open here, but let me open up the example project because it has a similar style. So in Archimate land, you'd effectively have these as your business processes. These boxes as a high-level business process, and then what you would then do is drill down into those and have a BPMN style diagram underneath. So that's exactly what you could start doing on your diagrams. You can start creating a business process one, and then creating a drill down diagram of the actual flow in between or underneath.
And maybe just what you have open currently. This is basically the specification of the stencil for a specific viewpoint. Am I right?
Yep.
And I was trying to modify the elements of the stencil. So, for example, if I'd like to do, let's say, a simplified version of this, I had it locked. I don't know or I don't know how to do this. So this is one of the other points within the email.
Yep. So that was, I think, one of your other points on here. So mess model stencil customization.
Exactly.
There's a few ways you can customize the viewpoint or the stencil itself. So the first is you can right-click any of these and just delete them from the viewpoint. So
that's easy. I was more interested in adding new ones.
Yeah. So to add new ones, you effectively have, if I take a look at business process in here, you can drag this business process onto this shapes tab and associate this component type with any shape. So you'll see I've got a lot more shapes than you will from your standard installation of Abacus, just because these are the ones that I've kind of added in over the years. But it's just a case of dragging this onto one of these shapes. So you can drag it onto any of these shapes, and then it will appear in this components tab then as that shape.
Let's say I want to use the standard Archimate shapes. I don't want to modify any type of shapes. I didn't have Archimate shapes within my my palette here. So
okay. Yeah, so if you don't ever have them in there, you can always right-click and click Add to Shapes Library, and then it will all appear under here. So for your Archimate ones, for example, one of the things you might want to do is take a look at the layered viewpoint and add these to your Shapes library, and then they will appear underneath this tab in here.
Okay.
Alternatively, if you were going to create a new viewpoint, a quick recommendation would be to copy one of the existing ones, paste this viewpoint in, and now if you only wanted to make a small change, you don't have to start adding all of these component types in again. You can just delete the ones that you didn't want in here in the first place. That tends to be a bit quicker.
So let's say, for example, I want to customize the stencil for the application usage viewpoint, where I have application interface, and I don't want to have application interface there anymore. I will just do delete. So this is the easy part. Let's say I would like to have, let's say, business actor within the viewpoint, which I don't have currently. So what I need to do, I would most probably go with the total viewpoint. I will see the stencil for the total viewpoint. I will select all the elements. I will add them to the shapes library, and then I will go back to the application usage viewpoint, open up the shapes, select the application, the actor, and set add to component.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
The other thing on the viewpoints as well that's worth mentioning is it's not just the style of the shape that you're using for the component type. If you right click, you can actually change their color, default sizes, add annotations. So there's a whole bunch of other customization options.
Okay, cool. Okay, maybe one question that was not addressed within the mail. So we have the two sections. Here we have the meta model, which I guess each and every project comes up with the meta model section for the definitions, and then we have the different architectures and dashboards/reports. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, if I want to have a common model for multiple users, can I hide some of those parts? Let's say the meta model is not important for a business analyst because he has it predefined. He only needs to enter content. Is this possible?
Yep. So typically in Abacus, when you have users working in here, they'll be part of different groups. So you'll add a new user in here. They might be using and password. In reality, they're probably using something like Active Directory to pull this data in. You'll assign those users to a specific group, and then on the architectures themselves, you can right-click and edit the permissions to say that this particular group can't maybe update this architecture, or maybe can't even see the architecture at all.
Cool.
So you can set permissions on the architecture levels, on any of the views that you create, or on any of these component types, connection types, and properties as well.
Perfect. And being within this topic, how does versioning, or let's say collaboration, work? Do we have a version trace of all the changes that are made, or
you will do.
All people work at the same time, yeah?
Yeah, so you will do. I think right now you just have the standalone trial of Abacus, which doesn't have Abacus collaboration server, but the collaboration server means everyone works off the same Abacus project, and therefore everything is versioned. There's a whole audit trail that you can run on any object, and obviously you have a view of who made changes and when those changes were made as well.
Okay, and the add-on is licensed separately, right? Or?
Yeah, so when you're thinking of purchasing Abacus licenses, the collaboration server is usually added in. It's the only time we don't sell collaboration server is if you're just a lone consultant, perhaps, rather than an organization. Every organization that purchases would have collaboration server. But during the trial, I don't think you'll have that.
One of my colleagues in the earlier phases, he already requested, let's say, a price estimate.
Okay.
And now I'm not sure whether the collaboration server was included or not.
It typically is. I can confirm. I think that was with Matt, wasn't it?
Yeah. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's fine. We can follow up on that. But typically it would be.
Okay. Just to know whether it's included or not.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, perfect. So, this is what we know. Now, can we get back to the questions, please?
Yep.
Yes, okay, so starting from the bottom, I think we already managed the two parts, the very bottom one and the second. Now, if we go to the third one, so let's say we have a lot of data already in the tool, and now we want to do some of the automatizations, like show me automatically the trace of this element throughout each and every layer. Is it possible to auto-generate some content of the tool?
Yes, so if I go back into the example project, auto-generation can happen in a couple of ways. So completely auto-generated diagrams can be scripted in Abacus, which can run against templates. Realistically though, if you're just trialing out the content in Abacus, one of the ways you can start creating different visualizations is by right-clicking on the background, opening element selection, and then choosing to add in specific components or connections to a diagram. Another quick way of doing this is for things like impact analysis or understanding everything that's connected to a specific component. If you just click on one of these, so I've selected this intranet application, on the right-hand side there's a references window. Okay, and this is showing all of the incoming and outgoing components of any application or any process or anything that I click on this diagram. You then have the option of right-clicking and choosing Create Drill Down Diagram. And if you select one of the viewpoints that you have, it will then drill down into the application and add in everything it's directly attached to onto one diagram for you. So this is, if you like, 1 degree of separation.
And this is 1 degree, yeah? And if I'll go with, let's say, degree 2 or 3?
So for 2 or 3, so that's something that's typically done through the auto-generated views, or you could quite easily open element selection again, and then select any other connections it has in here. So then you might say, well, also show me every other server that is hosting these applications, and we can add those onto the diagram, and we can see which servers these applications are hosted on as well. So you can start adding things incrementally, as well as doing this kind of bulk drill down diagram. Now, typically, if you're doing these kind of degrees of separation, things might initially get a bit messy because you're adding 2, 3, 4 levels of components. So that's when we start looking at automating things or using templates. That's typically easier to show once you have your own data in Abacus. but it's effectively done through these scripts that we have in here called these world according to views.
But within the available version to download, none of those scripts is present, right?
They will be. So you'll see some of these scripts available. So if you go to Manage Algorithms in here and click Add Algorithm, you'll see these in your scripts folder. So again,
so I need to browse for the scripts folder and the installation.
Exactly. So in the installation of Avolution, Abacus, and then scripts, you'll see some of these world according to ones at the bottom. If you've got the example project and you're using that, if you run these against the example, they'll run without any modifications necessary. If you wanted to run these against Archimate or any other type of framework, then we'd need to modify these to look at that.
Okay, perfect. Perfect for this one. Okay, and I guess the very last point of the mail, because so we went through the diagram auto generation, but somehow I have also touched the impact analysis.
Yeah, it's relatively similar, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe the last part would be the gap reporting.
Yes, so this happens in a couple of ways really. So if you take a look at something like an application catalog, the applications in this example project, and it's probably going to apply to Archimate as well, as much as they don't have any default properties. But you have these lifecycle dates. Okay, so these are lifecycle dates of the applications, or then you might have lifecycle dates of the technology that supports those applications. This catalog is just a way of capturing that information, but then there are a couple of views in Abacus that you can use to display that slightly differently. So the first is through a roadmap report. Looks something like this. So this is relatively static. It's just exported out to PDF or PowerPoint. And the idea is to start capturing the lifecycle dates of the application and everything else it's attached to. Okay, so you've got the end of life date of the application here, end of life date of the server it's hosted on here, and therefore you can see that there's a gap here between when this application's coming to end of life and when the server is that it's hosted on. So this one's quite useful. It becomes a bit more useful when you go to something like Abacus Enterprise. So during the trial of Abacus, you would have had access to the desktop version, where you've done most of the work in Archimate. Abacus Enterprise is a way of just publishing that content out then for other users to see. And that means you can start generating similar style roadmaps, but they can vary across how you display these. So they could be diagrams in Abacus, they could be different types of visualizations or reports that you embed in here, or they could be actual drill down diagrams.
This is exactly the type of roadmap I'll need. So I'll need a roadmap where I'll see, let's say, a diagram for the SS architecture, let's say all the systems I have today, and then I want to see a different diagram for my target architecture in 5 years. And I want to see set of the applications to be bordered green, or let's say marked green, seeing that those are the new ones. The ones to phase out, so they should be marked red, and the ones that you need to be changed to be marked orange.
Yes.
But still to have them as the same applications, yeah?
Yeah.
And to have this visually. So how to do this? Because as I can see that the publisher, or I don't know what was the portal that you showed to me, I think this is not the standard Abacus, right?
So this is Abacus Enterprise. This is effectively the publishing module, if you like.
Yeah, but can we do this also in the Abacus on its own?
Yeah, so it depends on how you might want to display that. So one of the options you have in Abacus, if you take a look on the left-hand side, is these architectures that we mentioned at the beginning.
Okay.
So you might have your as-is, which is probably what you're working on now, and then these future states, so what you might look like in 5 years' time.
Okay.
It's in here that you can do those changes, or make those changes, and then you can compare what you look like today to those 5-year states.
Wait, just to see, so I should have one architecture, right? Will be the production SS, and then within the architecture, I will have a model for the target of this architecture, right?
So you can do this in another architecture. You can also do that work in the same architecture as well, but you could also separate that completely. So one of the instances might be you only want people to see the as-is, and you only want certain people to see the future stage.
Okay, that's fine. So I have the current situation, like the baseline, and I have all the projects with their proposals, right?
Exactly.
So let's go, for example, with one of the projects of the IVR
Yep.
or
So you have the option
operationalization,
then.
whatever.
Yeah. So in these catalogs, you have the option of comparing what we currently look like. So this is the as-is application list to one of these projects. So if we compare it to something like the IVR project, you'll hopefully see some changes across IVR, and there might be some changes across some other applications as well. And these are highlighting property changes, connection changes, and any new applications.
How was this change created in the first place? Like when the project is being set up, and then we start to do the modeling, or let's say the incorporation of the data, how this is being done?
Yeah, so effectively what happens is you can right-click on the as-is and evolve this. And all that does is, in reality, creates a copy of this architecture. You can name that copy one of these project names or any other project that you're working on, and then make changes within this architecture.
Okay, and those are referenced clones of the elements.
Exactly.
Right? Okay.
And that's how it can compare these back to the original baseline.
If I propose a change, and let's say the change is implemented, and I want this clone to be part of the SS architecture. The above one, how to do this?
Yeah, so you can either do this on individual changes in the catalog and synchronize these property differences or connection differences across. So this is on an individual basis. Or you can do this on an entire architecture itself and synchronize the recommended changes in here instead. So there are a few ways you can do that. Or in effect, if this becomes everything that's been signed off and approved, you can just make this your as-is state.
Okay, cool. So maybe one thing that I have not tried are those 3D views. I don't know if you'll have a showcase for this.
Yeah, so 3D views aren't really, I'm going to say they aren't really used in Abacus as much. I'll open one up just so you can have an idea of what this looks like. They're quite useful for seeing some kind of overall view of all of the content you have in Abacus. This one is actually looking at everything. To generate them, you should be able to find some information on how to do that in the help section as well. The reason we tend to not kind of produce these views as much is there are usually better views of showing this information. This is just a historical view that's kind of maintained itself in Abacus. But it allows you to just kind of drill down into these different areas, and it effectively goes through this hierarchy that you have in Abacus. So in that sense, it's quite useful as a visualization of the data. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's quite useful as a high-level view. In reality, you'll probably be using some other visualizations.
Sure.
But certainly, there's some quite nice ones in here to take a look at. But there are various ones. So 3D views actually only work on the desktop version of Abacus as well. So if you are trialing the cloud version or SaaS-based solution, you won't be able to run these. Okay. And then maybe can we go to the dashboards part? Because this is also the one that I have not looked into that much. I know that you can create a chart somehow, link it to the data, and then automatically sync it with the data changes. I don't know, are there any highlights other than this that you can point out? So the dashboard section in here is effectively just a collection of different views in Abacus. So effectively you can start creating dashboards which are just, I'll drag some of these around so you can have an idea. So you might have two views like this, one which is a diagram or a catalog on the left hand side, and one which is then another diagram on the right hand side. And this is maybe a dashboard that you would save in Abacus itself. But in reality, dashboards have now moved to Abacus Enterprise to effectively have these styled views. So charts are going to be used a lot more in Enterprise, and dashboards are effectively Enterprise now. So it then allows you to start drilling down into the details in here a bit better, allows you to start filtering content, so it's much easier to start using the dashboards in Enterprise itself.
Okay, I'm still not sure about whether the price quote that we got also includes this enterprise part.
Okay, we can check that as well.
So maybe we can check this out as well.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Okay, perfect. So those are the major points that I was trying to go through, but I think we already covered them together. I'm not sure if there'll be anything more.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, if there is anything else that comes up, or if you need another call to discuss anything in more detail, just let me know. Let me or Matt know.
Okay.
It might be something we can answer quite quickly via email, or like I said, we can set up another call like this.
Perfect.
Brilliant.
Perfect.
So I'll be able to look up for you just what the what's actually included with the package you guys were looking at, and I'll be able to send you a message on that. But looking at it, do you guys have kind of an idea as to what your own next steps are going to be?
Well, basically, we have shortlisted. So we went through tens of tools, and we shortlisted, I think, 4 to 5. Abacus being part of them. And now we are doing this more detailed hands-on, where we basically go through the tool with the client within the different scenarios, and based on this, we'll go with the most probable candidate, and we'll go with the buy-in for the tool.
Okay, that sounds absolutely brilliant. So yeah, I'll be able to send you the rest of that information today anyway, as to what what's included, what functionality is included, and what you guys are looking at.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect. And as Andrew was saying, just if you have any other questions or you need any other information, just please feel free to reach out to either of us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, any questions, I'll get back to you.
Yeah,
perfect.
that's great.
Perfect.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Hope you guys have a nice day. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.